Have you ever just stopped and thought about how Europe went from being, a bunch of regional powers to basically dominating the entire globe in just a couple of hundred years? It's one of the most incredible, most dramatic shifts in all of human history. So today, we're going to unpack exactly how that happened.
Okay, so look at this. The contrast here really says it all. In 1450, you've got European powers that are almost entirely land-based, focused on their immediate neighbors. Fast forward just 200 years to 1650, and boom, we're talking about global maritime empires with trade networks that span the entire planet. This wasn't just a little bit of growth, it was a total rewiring of how the world worked, which of course begs the question.
So what was it? What was the spark that lit the fuse for this massive, world-altering explosion of expansion? Well, let's get into the formula. All right, the first piece of the puzzle is all about motivation. It comes down to three incredibly powerful forces that all converged at the same time: the hunger for gold, the mission for God, and the quest for glory. This trio created a drive so intense it literally pushed explorers over the edge of the known world. And the really crucial thing to get here is that these weren't three separate goals. Not at all. They were all tangled up together in a powerful feedback loop. The desire for gold would fund the voyages, which then brought glory to the king and country, and the whole thing was often wrapped up in the noble justification of spreading Christianity. It just created this momentum that became almost impossible to stop. Now, that drive for gold, it wasn't just simple greed. It was actually a formal economic policy called mercantilism. The core idea was that there was a fixed amount of wealth in the world, like a giant pie. And for your country to get a bigger slice, well, another country had to get a smaller one. This thinking turned the whole world into a high-stakes, competitive arena for grabbing resources. And this is where colonies became absolutely essential. They were the engine of mercantilism, delivering this perfect one-two punch. First, they were a source of incredibly valuable raw materials. We're talking gold, silver, sugar, you name it. And second, they became a captive market, forced to buy back the finished goods from the mother country. It was a brilliant, self-sustaining system for funneling wealth back to Europe. And there was also a really practical problem fueling this fire. For centuries, if you wanted luxury goods from Asia, things like spices and silk, they had to come over land. And those routes were controlled by the Ottoman Empire, which acted as a middleman and drove the prices sky high. So European nations were absolutely desperate to find a sea route to Asia to bypass them completely and get direct access to all that wealth. But look, motivation is one thing. You can want to sail around the world all day long, but if you don't have the right tools, you're not going anywhere. The age of exploration was only possible because it happened alongside a massive technological revolution that basically gave Europeans the keys to the world's oceans. All of a sudden, sailors had this incredible new toolkit. The compass, the astrolabe, these things meant you could actually know where you were when you couldn't see land. But the real game changer, the thing that multiplied the power of everything else, was the printing press. Suddenly, a new, more accurate map wasn't just a single precious document anymore. It could be copied and shared by the hundreds, spreading knowledge and accelerating the pace of discovery like crazy. Okay, so you have the gadgets, but you need the right vehicle, and that was the caravel, a ship that was faster, more maneuverable, and just built for these long, dangerous journeys. Its secret weapon, though, was the lateen sail. This was a triangular sail design that let ships actually sail against the wind. I mean, think about that. It turned the oceans from one-way streets into two-way highways. It meant you could get somewhere, and, crucially, you could get back home again. But we have to be really clear about something. This wasn't all just peaceful navigation and map-making. Far from it. Guns and gunpowder gave the Europeans a decisive, overwhelming military advantage. So exploration very quickly turned into conquest. This technology gap allowed tiny groups of Europeans to dominate huge populations and seize control of trade routes with, frankly, brutal efficiency. So you put it all together, this incredible motivation and this revolutionary technology. What do you get? Well, you get a world that is completely remade from the ground up. Let's take a look at the consequences. The speed of all this is just breathtaking. I mean, in 1494, Spain and Portugal literally drew a line on a map and divided the entire non-European world between just the two of them. And then, within a few short decades, massive ancient empires like the Aztec and the Inca were toppled, and their unbelievable wealth was just funneled straight back to Europe.
But this all came at a staggering human cost. And it's really important to remember that not everyone was celebrating this back then. There were people like Bartolomé de las Casas, a Spanish priest who saw what was happening with his own eyes, who were horrified. He wrote about the brutal abuses against the indigenous peoples and sparked a massive moral debate right there in Europe about the true price of empire. It's a debate that, in many ways, we're still having today. Of course, this kicked off an absolute frenzy. It was a full-blown race for empire, and each country kind of developed its own strategy. The Spanish, they went all in on mining silver out of the Americas. The Portuguese built this string of armed trading posts to control the spice trade in the Indian Ocean. And then you had the Dutch, who came along and pioneered a whole new model, a corporate-style commercial empire built around controlling commodities. Everyone had their own playbook.
So we've gone through the why, the how, and the what happened. When you step back and look at this whole era, what's the big takeaway?
It really boils down to this powerful, simple formula. You take the intense motivation of gold, God, and glory, and you supercharge it with revolutionary new technology. The result wasn't just exploration. It was the creation of a brand new world order, one that put Europe right at the very center of everything.
I mean, there's no question the interconnected global world we all live in today was forged during this period. But it also created patterns of inequality and exploitation that left a really deep and complicated legacy. And that leaves us with a final, big question to think about. As we live in the world this era created, how do we fully and honestly account for its immense hidden costs?